Slide right up. It's not the one we called up, is it? Man, that'd take a while. And this is how you come down. Sure is it's a different kind of cold on the coast than the interior. Really bites through to your skeleton. The moist. It's funny, a friend of mine, they go down to Cabo San Lucas and they guide for marlin and tuna in the wintertime. And his knees kill him at home here on the coast of his fishing lodge when he has to walk down a steep hill to get the guide boat. I think he's in his early 60s. But anyways, it's funny how he mentions that the knee pain absolutely goes away the second they get to Mexico in the wintertime. When they come back, this damp cold just penetrates and causes the pain. It's bizarre how our bodies work, isn't it? But anyway, kind of chilly, but kind of good because the deer, I couldn't get to processing those 2 bucks yesterday. I have to do it this morning. And then, I guess tomorrow, I have to process 19 turkeys. and then. So much to get caught up on. Anyway, I made a pen for the dog in the shop here. She's in there now. Because if I have her outside here, she's just chewing. Being a puppy, right? But she's pretty content in that box. And she's a very independent dog. Had no choice the way they were born and where they were born. But her job is to keep this place safe when she gets older. So we lost 20-something chickens to bears this year. Everybody in the neighborhood has bear problems, but if you got a big bear hungry dog, there's no problem, right? And you don't have to kill them all. Anyway, there's some important things to be heard. What else could I share? Actually, I always forget to mention things. So a lot of people can ask what I saw, if I saw anything abnormal or heard anything abnormal in this last adventure, and I think I reported in one of my earlier videos that you made there. It was one time when I got out of my truck something blasted a tree. It sounds, who knows if it is actually wood on tree that people are hearing, but there has been reports. I remember hearing of a bow hunter who saw a large hairy arm in the underbrush with a big chunk of wood in its hand after he heard that sound. So I remember reading that. What else have we? I mean, obviously the rock on rock smacking, boulders being tossed. But do we know 100% for certain that that sound is wood on wood? I don't know myself. I haven't seen it. I've heard it, but I haven't seen it. But anyway, what I heard, I mean, it was really windy that day too. I thought I heard shrapnel from that blast, that impact. I'm not 100% certain, but I do know 100% for sure that something just blasted this tree about within 100 yards of me. The second I got out of the truck and both my boots hit the dirt. But it was in an island of timber with fresh logging around it. So, and of course I have my Magnum with me. I'm like, whatever, you know what I mean? Whatever. I don't go investigate. I don't give it the attention or respect it possibly wants. If it is something or somebody wanting to get my attention, I just glanced over there, ignored it, but kept it, my peripheral on it, and I walked up around the corner where I wanted to go walk up and I had a look anyway. Like I said, at that point, my attitude is I've got every damn right to be on this planet anywhere I want to, without harming anyone or disrespecting anybody. I have a right to be here, and so do you. So anyway, other than that, another day, what I did was, during this trip, I put in a lot of work into finding new country that I've never been before without telling anybody where I'm going, because you tell one person, they tell another and another, and next thing you know, it's a frickin' public campground. And it's something else when you can find an area somewhat untouched by yourself and enjoy it that way. So that's what I've been after the past 3 years, and I found that area, but I as well ran into a couple of guys at this one particular zone that I found, and they were there again this year, and they make bait piles for deer and sit on it. But they bring a bunch of grain, which is legal here in British Columbia, and I got a problem with it. I don't give a shit how you get your food. I really don't care, as long as you don't waste it. But anyway, so that screwed my plans, and I almost put me back to plan, starting off right at the beginning then, because I went up last spring with about 300 pounds of salt, spread out over various areas, left cameras on it, just to see what's running around there, and see if I had found a decent place to hunt or not. So that basically set me off to going on extreme, almost panic-like exploration this past trip. So I'm like, oh shit, I'm back to square one. Now I gotta go find somewhere that holds game and is worthy of my time. And now I'm right in the middle of the season where I thought I would have had all that homework already done the past year and a half, 2 years. So that's what I would do. I'd get up in the morning, hunt a particular area that I felt might be good, and then I would spend the rest of the day or the midday exploring every single road and trail I could come across and find out where it went and what was there. And there's enough snow there to show me what was living around there. And that's what I did every single day, even though I was sick as a frickin' dog. But I think it probably wasn't the best choice. But I mean, how do you just lay around in a small shit-eating place with being sick all day? So anyways, I pushed on. What I'm getting at is the only other time I felt off, I found this old trail, old one. I went through a newish cut block on the side of a big long mountain range, and I found this old small trail just wide enough for a quad. And I imagine it was made years ago, possibly made by trappers, who knows, I don't know. So I started going along that trail and going and going and going and going and going, and it got into never ever before logged off area, all original big trees, big timber, and very remote. And I went along there for possibly, I don't know, a few miles, and then all of a sudden it just hit me. Oh, no, this isn't good. I'm out of here. Go figure, right? Because I spent almost a month exploring new country by myself every single day, remote, and knowing that there have been numerous sightings really close to where I am. whatever. This is the way it is everywhere you go in British Columbia and many other places. So you just got to accept that and push forward. But it is odd, I find, when I can do that, when I can drive for 2 days north by myself, jump into remote mountains and forests by myself, no problem, in the dark, in the morning, no problem. But then there's all of a sudden that one moment where I can't go forward anymore. Isn't that a little odd? See what I'm getting at? So I had it happen once. It was on that old, possibly a trapper's trail, cut along nearly the top of that ridge for a long ways, and all of a sudden I just come to a brick wall. And there's no tracks in the snow. There's this wolf track in the snow, I noticed, but I'm gonna share a video of what happened on this trip with the pack of wolves actually later on. It's definitely not about the wolves. I had them around me one morning with their fresh kill in the forest, and I went and found it by the sounds of the ravens, and I videotaped the whole thing sneaking in on their kill. And it was a 5x5 whitetail buck, and I videotaped the whole thing. So it's not about the wolves. The wolves that were on that road, it wasn't them, their presence that stopped me, that I was picking up on. That doesn't happen with me and wolves. So what made me stop? I don't know. But it's a weird feeling to have your confidence ripped from you in the 10th of a second, like, put on the brakes. Ooh, nope, I'm out of here. And I swung around and I left, and I never went back up that trail. Isn't that odd? I find that very odd. But that's all I have to report for any kind of potential weirdness that may have happened on this last trip. Thankfully that was it, because I'm just not into it. Now, and again on the note of hunting and what hunting's becoming and what people think hunting should or shouldn't be, and making it more difficult and things aren't fair and it's cheating, I often wonder now how it got that way. It's just getting food, man. It's getting your food. It's getting your natural, healthy food. That's what it is. So whoever turned it into, it's supposed to be a challenge, or you're proving something, or it's an ego thing, or it's cheating if you do this, or cheating if you do that. You shouldn't be able to do that. Who gives a shit? It's getting food. So I'm going to have a real good lengthy talk about that on the other channel shortly. I'm going to say some things that need to be said out loud, as usual. But anyway, that's enough of my babble for this morning. So my little black bear puppy is sitting there calm in her little cage. I made a cedar corral for her with a secure little box in there. I think as long as she knows I'm here, it's all good. But anyway, let's get on to some voices. This is titled Rant Material Only. Wise words from a former slave. Quote, "Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did and it never will. Find out just what any people will quietly submit to, and you have found out the exact measure of injustice and wrong which will be imposed upon them. And these will continue until they are resisted with either words or blows, or with both. The limits of tyrants are prescribed by the endurance of those whom they oppress." End quote. Frederick Douglass, 1817 or 1818 to 1895, American-born slave, escaped and became a social reformer, abolitionist, and orator, writer, and statesman. And I have no problem sharing the words of that gentleman here today with all of you. There's many, many people out in the world today spending a lot of their time trying to bring awareness to all of you and point out things that the world should care about right now. And that takes a lot of time, man. There's a lot of people out there who from my observing them, they're what could be considered as financially successful, whereas I'm at the stage of the game now. It doesn't matter how much freaking money you got, that's not a sign of success, trust me. But there's people out there who have enough finances, they don't have to waste their time online. They don't have to do anything. But there's a lot of people out there who I have respect for who seem to be financially successful, and they still donate shit piles of their time to try to bring awareness to all of you with various topics going on the planet today. And I feel it's very important, and that's why I got no problem sharing that short email. And thank you to the man who sent that in. Now, let's get into it. More voices, more knowledge. Here we go. This is titled a historical account. Hello, Steve. Feel free to use my name. I happen upon your YouTube channel within the past month and find it educational. I'm in my mid-60s and I live on the border of the Okefenokee Swamp in southeastern Georgia, some 30 miles from the Florida state line. Well, I've never physically encountered one of the hairy men. The old folks called them boogers or wood boogers. So, kind of funny side note, the booger word name, it's always kind of made me laugh and somewhat cringe in a mild way, only because when we were growing up, a booger was a booger that flew out of your nose when you were a snotty-nosed kid. So it's kind of funny to me to hear, though it's always been around, I would just call them boogers. But who named them after a booger? Anyway, sorry. I've heard long drawn-out whooping calls in the late night hours during the past decade. I grew up believing they were things told children. I grew up believing they were things adults told children to keep them in line. I've been a lifelong skeptic of cryptids, UFOs, and paranormal until the past decade. I won't go into what brought on my change of viewpoint in this communication to prevent a long-winded story being longer. My 300-acre farm has been in my family since the 1940s and is mostly forested and bounded by a state forest on west and other private timberlands to the north and east. The Okefenokee Swamp is on the south and southwest. I've rambled and hunted the creeks, river basins, and swamps in this area since the mid-1960s, with a couple of short breaks during my adult years while in the military and working elsewhere in the south. And I am thoroughly familiar with the local flora and fauna. It seems the forest people / hairy men / savvy / Sasquatch / Yeti have abilities that transcend those of us Homo sapiens, but they are still flesh and blood creatures who display intelligence. One could infer from that some are of good disposition and some are of bad, but I would suppose that all should be considered dangerous. I'm sending the below story that I encountered some 5 years ago. I had a copy of the article as printed in the Savannah, Georgia newspaper in 1829. But am presently unable to locate it. The below narration comes from a website that quotes the article, and I hope sharing it might add at least a small bit to the growing information base. Steve Strickland. Steve, thanks man, I appreciate that. And here we go. The winter of 1828/1829 was extremely dry, and two men living on the edges of the swamp decided to explore deep into it as they could. Accompanied by a boy, they went into the Okefenokee, and over a course of 2 weeks continued to penetrate deeper and deeper into it. As they explored the very heart of the swamp, they made a startling discovery of gigantic footprints. Quote, the length of the foot was 18 and the breadth was 9 inches. The monster, from every appearance, must have moved forward in an easy or hesitating gait, his stride from heel to toe being a trifle over 6 feet. Milledgeville, Georgia, Statesman, January 1829, republished the Connecticut Sentinel, February 9th, 1829. The men, as newspapers of the time noted, had seen enough, ending their expedition and retreating out of the swamp. They related to their friends and neighbors what they had seen. The story excited the curiosity of a party of hunters who lived just across the Florida line, 9 in number. They went into the swamp to find the mysterious giant. They were guided by one of the members of the original party. Following for some days the direction of their guide, they came at length upon the track first discovered, some vestiges of which were still remaining. Pursuing these traces several days longer, they came to a halt on a little eminence and determined to pitch their camp and refresh themselves for the day. The expedition was described in detail in newspaper reports published in February of 1829. Those accounts indicated that as the hunters were discharging their guns to reload them with fresh powder for the night, a wild animal charged their camp. The next minute was full in their view, advancing upon them with a terrible look and ferocious mien. Our little band instinctively gathered close in a body and presented the rifles. The huge being, nothing daunted, bounded upon his victims, and in the same instant received the contents of 7 rifles. The fight However, it did not end there. He did not fall alone, nor until he had glutted his wrath with the death of 5 of them, which he effected by wringing the head from the body. Writhing and exhausted at length, he fell with his hapless prey beneath his grasp. As the creature lay dying on the ground, writhing and sometimes roaring, the men who survived the attack gathered around it to make a closer inspection. The creature was found to measure 13 feet from head to toe, and his breadth and volume of just proportions. Immediately fearful that the dying monster's cries might attract others of its kind, the hunters fled the swamp. The men who died in the battle with the creature were left lying where they had fallen. It's a remarkable story, but could it be true? The honest answer is that no one knows. The newspaper correspondent who reported it wrote that people living in Ware County on the margins of the Okefenokee Swamp clearly believed it. Either way, the story of the 1829 attack was one of the earliest written accounts of the creature we know today as Bigfoot or Sasquatch. Sightings of some kind of large creature in the swamp and discoveries of large footprints continue to be reported from the area to this day. End of email. And there you go. Steve, absolutely appreciate the time you just donated to the people here, man. Appreciate it. And that's alarming as all alarming could be, isn't it? You know, you think about that one. You know, many people might not believe that something could suck up firepower from that many guns and keep coming and keep fighting. But just so you guys know, when a grizzly bear, which is similar in proportions, in body weight, not shape, an angry, adrenalized grizzly bear can basically have its heart and lungs blown clear apart and still keep fighting for quite some time and instill a lot of damage on a human being after the human has basically emptied its rifle into it. And unfortunately, I know I have a direct incident that I could share. A friend of a friend who was hunting with his son and nephews in northern BC, and I think it was the 18-year-old son left with the caribou head and meat on his back to go back to camp, and they never found him. When they did, he had ran into a sow grizzly bear and had emptied his 30-06 rifle, so that would have been 5 or 6 shots, probably 5 anyway, emptied the rifle into that sow bear, and she still managed to get a hold of him and basically, unfortunately, ripped his head in half. And they were both dead upon discovery from the authorities when they phoned them when they got a hold of them to go look. But I know numerous other people have had incidences with grizzly bears and other game animals too. And it's definitely not unheard of for something that size and demeanor to do some absolute stunning, amazing, terrifying things after being fatally shot numerous times from very large caliber rifles. So for any of you out there that may question that something, a being of this type may be able to pull off what was just shared, is very, very, very realistic. Fact. I wouldn't wish that upon anyone. Imagine how feeble you would feel, how vulnerable you would feel if there were 7 of you and all 7 of you are blazing away at one large being that is absolutely pissed at you and coming to get your ass. And imagine having to stand there and witness that and still try to keep your composure to reload your weapon and shoot and fight as your friends are getting their heads popped off their bodies like ants. Could you imagine? Like, actually try to picture that scene for real. The sounds, the adrenaline, the breathing, the noise, the screaming, the growling, dealing with the shock of seeing something like that description and alive in the flesh and blood and doing what it's doing right there in front of your ass. Holy shit. How many of us today, being raised in society today, would just curl up in the fetal position and start sucking your thumb and crying and screaming for mommy? Right? I don't think there's too many of us out alive today that have the same flavor of fight than we did a few generations back, that's for sure. Wow. What a shit-eating experience, man. I hope I never have to have that experience myself with one of these beings. I don't look for it. But I'll fight if I have to. Wow. All right, here's another one. Let's mark this as red. Hi, Steve. Hope all is well. I live alone with pets off-grid in Arizona at 5,700-foot elevation near the Grand Canyon. Very remote with lots of trees and a few distant neighbors. It's a free-range area with Angus cattle roaming around. Not too uncommon to open front door and see a 2,500-pound black cow staring from 10 feet away. Following activities all within last month. Number 1, have been smelling the same strong odor occasionally in the early evening. Not as vile as most people describe, but, strong. A mix of garbage, wet dog, and septic tank. Just thought it was my dog's farting or possible septic system venting. I keep thinking how strong it was, but it only lasts for about 20 minutes each time, so I did investigate. Also, the dogs have been barking a lot more lately. Number 2, while walking the short distance from my cabin towards my greenhouse at night, 10-11 p.m., I heard an unfamiliar low-pitched whistle just behind the greenhouse, back in the woods. It was one short, single-note whistle like, "Hey, over here." No odors. I'd never heard a bird chirping at this time of night except for an occasional owl hoot. It sounded more human than bird. I brushed it off, but after it happened 4 more times within the following week, same location and time, I was feeling strange about it. Number 3, most recently, I discovered fresh deer and elk tracks around the usual areas I hike surrounding my property. I usually hike 3 to 4 miles each day with my dogs. I've been here a year, and these were first signs I've seen within a few miles of my property, except cattle tracks and cow pies, which are everywhere. While hiking a few weeks later, I came across a huge bull elk about 30 feet away between the thick juniper trees. We stood staring at each other for a few seconds before my dog barked and ran off. A few days later, I found more deer and elk tracks, and 2 scat sites I noticed human-like footprints. I'll attach photos. I wear a size 12 shoe, shown in pics for comparison. The first site had 2 prints about 12 inches long, several feet apart, and not in a stride pattern. One was much wider. The larger print was about 50% wider than my print, while the other were very similar to mine. Both prints had a few toe marks. The ground here is usually fairly compact from the natural gravel, but it's monsoon season now, so much softer, but not muddy. The tracks are about 3 inches deep in the ground, whereas my print is only about a half an inch max depth in the soft ground. At the other scat site, I saw 3 larger prints, 15 inches, which had a mid-tarsal break and had distinct toe marks as well. These were about 2 inches deep and 6 to 8 inches wide, same proportions as my foot, but larger. These were not together in a stride pattern either. There was no inside arc curve on any of the prints. They were only about 1,000 feet from my cabin. It looks like a family is hunting in the area. I've heard Sasquatch has been spotted several times near a mountain range about 15 miles away. Thanks for your awesome channel. Appreciate it, Kevin. Okay, Kevin, got you, man. Thanks for the share. And I think by the sounds of it, you're fairly familiar enough to know the drill, right? The drill when it comes to what to do or what not to do or what to take note of when you're out in the back 40 and you smell these scents or feel something. It's off, right? That's a good idea to listen to your instincts, listen to your gut feeling no matter what. All right, let's get into another one. Mark, this is red. I've got so many. I got so much I want to share. It's funny, I have to, once I get settled in here more and get all my stuff done, I'm able to settle down and get to the other important voices, past voices that I've been anticipating hearing from and sharing from them with you as well. But in the meantime, right now, I'm going to get to these right here. This titled, "I'm Back, Sasquatch Stole My Passion From Me" in Illinois. Hi Steve, I wrote you over a year and a half ago about my encounter I had over 40 years ago. You can use my first name, Rob. I'm a retired firefighter. You read my story. I recounted about my story with one of these beings while hunting and my inability to step back into the woods ever again. Since then, I've gone back to the beginning of your channel and listened to every story from the beginning. I listened intently to every story and learned a common thread in every story that I listened to. Every encounter, every person, what was the common thread? No one was taken, no one was injured, no one was molested in any way at all, ever. I said that I hated myself for not returning to the woods to hunt or fish ever again. I was absolutely and irrevocably terrified. I remember, man. I remember. To the present day, sitting here listening to your channel and all of the stories, I got my hunting clothes out of the back of the closet. Don't ask me why, but I stuck a .45 caliber automatic in my holster. Don't ask me why, probably just a little steel courage. It was midday, not looking to go into the woods in the dark. I got in my car and drove to the hunting reserve where I hunted my whole life. Walked off into the woods, and trails that I had gone to all my life seemed very foreign to me. I tried to pinpoint as best I could where I was hunting that day. I tried my best to find the large oak where that incident happened now 43 years ago. He told me to go back to the exact place that I had my encounter with this being, and it would be all normal again. I sat there with my back against the tree, and all over again the woods became quiet. And I heard as clear as someone sitting next to me, "Take what you need and leave the rest." My fear dissolved. I took a deep breath and it was over. Don't ever let anything steal your passion from you, not even a Sasquatch. Again, soon. Thank you so much. I'm going again soon. Thank you so much. I'm going hunting next year. Thank you, Rob, and you can use my first name. Okay, Rob. That's good news, man. That makes me happy to read that. But you know what I'm going to say. I mean, you know, it's up to the individual how you're going to deal with the shit and whether or not you want to go back in there. But just make sure you keep your wits about you, obviously. And obviously, it's almost a silly thing to say to anyone who's had this reality punched in their face, right? Because 100% of every single one of us who has witnessed one of these damn things, one of these beings in the woods, you never, ever, ever forget it. You cannot drive down a rural road ever again without gazing off into the timber and watching and looking for that similar shape. It doesn't matter what's going on or where you are. You never, ever can't not think about it ever again. It's a life sentence. So, for me to suggest to you, Rob, what to do or what not to do, or to follow your senses or, you know, be aware, it's almost a waste of time, isn't it? Because I know you're going to be anyway. But anyway, good luck out there, and make sure you email back in your success, your feelings, what you experienced, how it was, and how it is. I'm curious to know what it is like for you the night before you go, the morning when you're driving there, as opposed to once you get out of your vehicle and get into the woods and how you feel then. I'm curious about that, because still today, I find that when I'm at home, the night before I'm about to go somewhere remote, I can get that cringe feeling like, oh, I can freak myself out and picture what's in there in the woods in the dark, or what might be there as tomorrow morning, the morning's going to happen again. And I find that I freak myself out more at night before I'm going, and in the morning in the dark when I have my coffee. But the weird thing is the second I get out of my vehicle and get into that forest in the darkness, I'm fine. Isn't that weird? But I guess maybe it's possibly because I'm so focused on the excitement of and my passion of what I'm doing, and I know that my sixth sense is going to tip me off anyway. I don't know what it is, but I'd be interested to hear how it is for you when you go back in there. What it's like the night before, the morning before, on your way, and then what it is like for you during. I'm curious about that. See if anybody else shares the same shit that I got going on when it comes to doing that. Thanks for sending that email, man. I'm glad you're getting out there. Just be careful. It is freezing in here. I have got to get that wood stove hooked up in here, amongst other things. Let's get into another one. No title. Hello. Hello, all willing to acknowledge the unexplainable. I recently had an experience I cannot figure out. I'd like to remain anonymous if possible. In case there is something to my experience, I believe parents in my area should be aware of it. Location, Onslow County, North Carolina. My particular neighborhood is next to a large military installation. As a kid, I was raised outside, hunting, fishing, camping, and looking for reptiles in the woods of northern Minnesota. I've had a few encounters with wildlife that have made my butt pucker, but nothing has come close to what I observed in my own backyard. I have to say, I'm not a fan of feeling like prey, and this was worse than having a mountain lion walking outside my blind. At least when I encountered the mountain lion, I had my Henry 30-30 and confidence I could handle the situation. I had a real shitty feeling that I had no chance against this thing. This particular evening was dramatically cooler in temperature than the current heat waves, probably around 75, 82 degrees Fahrenheit. The humidity had lifted as well. I left my back patio light off while running my pup outside. The visibility was slightly more than sunset, and there was a slight breeze. I was sitting downwind. My pup was taking his sweet time sniffing the far corner. Most of our fence is 6-foot privacy fence. This corner has multiple pallets built up to cover a gap. There's a strip of brush and trees that lead to a larger wooded area behind this corner. It's very thick at this time of year. Eye shine from coyotes and other smaller animals can get close enough to make out, but that's it for visibility. I watched my pup as his tail dropped between his hind legs. He froze, pointing and staring straight into the brush. I noticed the wind stopped and really focused on what I could hear. I heard nothing, not even the normal ringing in my ears, just dead silence. I slowly stood up and recalled my pup to my side. He slowly backed up towards me. The mama bear in me started to get pissed. Every fiber of my being was screaming for me to protect my family. I picked up my boy and brought him inside. I grabbed my favorite machete and stormed over to the back corner. As I made my way off the patio, a vibration just wrecked me. The only way I can describe it is like when just the back passenger windows are down, there's an uncomfortable vibration, a loud wind / Harley Davidson-like sound. I was on my knees holding myself up with my machete. My arms and legs felt heavy. I felt drunkish and suddenly dripping sweat. Now I'm really pissed. What in the actual F is happening? I get the feeling of eyes directly on me. I get up and move to the side of the fence. There's definitely something large breathing in the brush. I couldn't have been more than 2 yards from the breathing sound. From my experience, it did not sound like a bear breathing, nor did it sound like a canine. I found exposed rock and slapped my machete on it, hoping to force a reaction. I hear nothing but the breeze and the neighbor's donkey. I poked my head around to see through the pallets into the brush. I couldn't see anything, but then a smell hit me. It was like a wet dog and wet feral hog combined. It was condensed to a darker area of brush, so I used the flashlight on my phone, only finding more thick brush. My mind is literally blown. How did this thing move off without me hearing it? There's no way. I should have heard something moving away. I backed off to my patio and waited just listening for anything. After a few minutes of hearing the normal neighborhood sounds, I went outside. I haven't had an experience like this before, and I cannot stress this enough. It's on loop in my mind now. Part of me hopes to never have that experience again. But I also want to see it and make solid eye contact. I want to be able to see it and accept it, I think. I'm a veteran and I love the outdoors, but whatever was in my yard terrified me more than anything I have ever experienced before. There's nothing better than the beauty of nature and the creature within it, and the creatures within it. I thought I had a healthy respect for the capabilities of the animals in our world, and this thing was beyond overwhelming. I want and need to know more. Like I said earlier, I'm not sure what transpired that evening, but I can't forget it. I never stopped looking over at the corner when I'm out with my dogs. I hope anyone in my area can hear this experience and take it or leave it. There are children all around, and I will not tolerate harm coming to them. I can share this experience and warn others of a possible danger to the child. Our future generations must be protected, and in this Jumanji game of life, who knows what will happen next? My pup is less than a year at around 80 pounds. He has a typical teenage attitude of invincibility. This thing caused an instant, full stop in his behavior. Thank you for your time. All right, and I absolutely appreciate your time and especially your motivation, which is what I'm about. I'm absolutely about the motivated people who want to know the truth and want everybody in the immediate area to know that same truth as well, right? Because it's only fair. The people withholding information today and manipulating us is absolute bullshit. Makes me growl. Yeah, and it's amazing, you know, that experience might not sound like much to anybody who's just casually reading or listening and looking for some sort of lame entertainment, which this channel isn't for, but you have to understand the impact of these experiences, although they might sound subtle to you if you're not familiar with this shit. You gotta understand, imagine the impact from these, what sound like mild experiences, is insanely huge, right? Imagine what it takes to motivate you to go out of your way and write down a lengthy email to some stranger on the internet to share this experience after you've been in the woods basically all your life. You're a veteran, you've been hunting, you've possibly been shot at, and you're not motivated to write into a person on YouTube about those experiences. But this experience, damn rights you are. You are very motivated, very concerned, and to do that takes a lot, right? These experiences are very, very impactful. They're not good on average, just because our senses just have a tough time dealing with it, because it's such an overload of, I'm losing my words here, but just it's very, very, very intimidating and alarming, right? And we need every single person to know. Everybody should and does deserve a crack at having all the knowledge we can muster up, right? So that they can make a responsible decision when it comes to taking their family somewhere and letting their kids go out and play somewhere by themselves, right? We need to know the truth. So, thank you so much for sending that in, and I hope somebody in your area is here. I'm sure they are. And they're listening, and they're going to add to this in an email, or they're going to comment about it in the comment section below underneath this video. Now, here's another one. My fingers are freaking numb. I'm going to close on this one. This is titled Bear Man. Hello, Steve. Mike Gogolin here with a warning for you. Beware the bear man. Never look it in the eye, as it will take you. I once told you I used to sleep in the wilderness. I would wrap my body around the trunk of a conifer. One such time I was awoke by something trying to pull me out from under the tree I was sleeping under. It was a bear man. I always kept my .44 mag on my chest in the holster. Because of the way I was wrapped around the trunk, I was able to unholster my .44 and shoot at this bear man. This saved my life. I told you before, nighttime is when the weird stuff happens out there. Never turn your back on one. Keep facing it, but do not look it in the eye, and carefully back away from it. You always need a watchful eye to what's up in the canopy of the trees as they climb very good. Always check your backtrack to see if they're trying to target you. Be safe, my friend. More at another time. Well, all right, Mike. That sounds interesting. You got my curiosity, and obviously it sounds like you got a bunch of experiences under your belt. You have some knowledge, and if you would like to share that knowledge, we're all here eagerly waiting to hear it, read it. All right? Share what you got, man. And again, to all you people out there who email me in and promise to share another something else later, or finish this later, or another one later, do it. Try, if you can, just try to do it all in one go. All right? Because there is so many good, honest, brave people patiently waiting to be heard and share what they have with all of you. And it can be some time before I get to an email, I'll tell you what, right? Obviously. There are so many people, so many honest people out there. But anyway, time to get my shit going, have some venison I have to process, and then get geared up for doing turkeys. Holy shit. And she's been pretty patient over here, hasn't she? Maybe I'll pull her up and see how much she's grown overnight. Oh, there she is. Say goodbye to everybody. See you tomorrow. Okay? Future bear terrorizer.
Huh? Now I wait and see what the hell we're doing. Slide right up. It's not the one we called up, is it? Man, that'd take a while. And this is how you come down.